I sat at that oncology appointment, and the only word I could hear was cancer. And it just became louder and louder and louder throughout that conversation. And that was a real moment where it dawned on me and went, okay, I get it. I understand what you're saying.
Hello and welcome to the Thrive Against Cancer podcast, where we give a voice to the cancer community. My name is Toby Freeman, founder and CEO of the Robin Cancer Trust, cancer advocate and your host. Every episode, we will be hosting open and honest conversations with people affected by cancer, whether personally, as a family member, clinician, or charities and organisations. We will be talking to the cancer community about the cancer community and all the things that are important to you. Our guest today is an ultra runner and testicular cancer survivor. At the age of 48, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer and made a promise to rebuild stronger and create awareness around the importance of regular checking. In the 3 years since recovery, he's moved into ultra and endurance running events, achieving goals he never thought possible. Our guest today is Andy Hood. Andy, welcome.
Toby, thank you. Really good to catch up.
I am delighted that you're here. From all the way in Devon, and we're based here in Essex. So thank God for the virtual world and us being able to jump on a Zoom. So it's very exciting, and we made a promise to each other that we wouldn't just talk about running, but I'm sure it will be a theme for the day.
Oh, absolutely. I think it naturally comes up, and particularly as you're a bit of a runner yourself.
I've got lots to learn, shall we say? So, but we will keep this we'll keep this as balanced as possible. But
very wise.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great catch-up call, as we do with all the guests, and we dived into so much good stuff. So I think, should we just dive in with, right at the beginning, your journey with testicular cancer and how that all came about?
Toby, I think you're right. It's a great place to start because, I didn't check myself. I was 48 years old, as you said in the intro, when I discovered that something wasn't quite right. And I hadn't checked myself in the 48 years before that. And I still ask myself a lot of questions now as to perhaps why that was. And I think it's because it just doesn't sit in your consciousness as perhaps it should do. And I don't think we're particularly open about talking about it. I think particularly us men are often closed shops. We're not as open as perhaps we should be and have those conversations. Did I ever talk to anyone about testicular cancer before 3 years ago? No, I didn't. And I'd been watching the Grand Tour with two of our boys. We love sitting down, having a bit of family time, watching Clarkson, Hammond and May larking around. And they were doing a challenge. And part of that challenge, they were just having a bit of a conversation around prostate cancer, and testicular cancer sort of briefly came up in their conversation. And I've been out for a run, a beautiful June evening, been out on an old rail trail up here in North Devon that I really enjoy running on, out through the pine forests and fields of sheep and cows either side of you. I think it was just one of those perfect runs. I took the obligatory post-run selfie. I still have that. I think I will probably keep that forever because that's a real defining moment in my life, that selfie. I got home, jumped in the shower, and that thought of the Grand Tour crossed my mind. And I thought maybe I should check. And I did. And I found something that definitely wasn't right. My right testy was okay. And my left one had shrunk to the size of a marble and gone rock solid. And I was like, there's something not right there. And we're very fortunate up here in North Devon, got excellent GP service. And within a handful of days, I was in front of the GP. No doubt we'll probably talk more about that experience as we go through. And it resulted in an orchidectomy and chemotherapy because mine had spread. I hadn't picked it up early enough. And it was not a place I had ever expected to be.
That's amazing, isn't it? Because there's a couple of things there. I mean, first off, generally, with respect, you're a bit older than the average person getting testicular cancer.
Definitely.
So, there's an element of never having been educated about it. Obviously, there's a bit more of that happening now, which is great, which you are a huge part of. But those conversations perhaps not happening at all, especially at a younger age. And then, being concerned with maybe like check your poo, check your prostate. You're almost at that age, aren't you? I think you get your poo checks at about 45 in the male and everything, but you're not thinking testicular. And then just the fact that, and they're well known for it, but James May, Richard Hammond, and Jeremy Clarkson just talking bollocks, for want of a better phrase, is just saved your life in this way. And that's just almost a throwaway sort of thing that they're just mentioning on this program, but that's had a profound effect. And that's, for me, that highlights how important awareness is, right? Just the act of talking about it.
Yeah, 100%. I was brought up in a generation where this definitely wasn't spoken about. It wasn't front and center of any part in my life. Having been through testicular cancer, still traveling that journey now, I understand 15 to 35-year-olds are primary risk area. At 48, I was obviously significantly older than that. But we're in a much better place today, not just with the likes of your podcast, but I think with social media has really helped break down these barriers. A lot of what I do now, as you said earlier on, is around awareness. I use my running as a platform to talk about it, because I think you get very good engagement that way. And actually, I wrote to Clarkson afterwards. Once I'd sort of recovered out the other end, I wrote to him. A proper old school letter. I didn't tweet to him. I didn't slide into his DMs. I actually put pen to paper and wrote to him, and I just gave an outline, and I just said, look, I appreciate that this will probably end up in your mailbag and someone might read it to you or might make you aware of it, but I just want to let you know that you undoubtedly changed my life for the better, because I don't think I would have checked. I still don't think I would have checked. And the oncologist said to me, you were so close to this being a whole lot more serious. So close.
Wow. Well, should we dive into that? What was your prognosis? What was the outcome after the ultrasound scan?
So I'd had the ultrasound. So first of all, I had the GP appointment. And can I just say that anyone who is thinking, doesn't matter what you're going for, anyone who's nervous about going to your GP and talking about something particularly as intimate as our private parts, don't be. Okay? They are quite used to it. And my GP was great. Guy, his name is, and he just made me feel like this is the most normal thing in the world. And I had to get used to dropping my pants. Everybody seems to want me to pull my pants down at this time. But he just made it feel like it's the most normal thing in the entire world, kept the conversation going. Then I was in with a sonographer who gave me exactly the same feeling. Neil, his name was. He was fantastic. Again, just made me feel very comfortable, very relaxed, very calming in his nature. He clearly had spotted something. I remember coming home to my wife and talking about the appointment, and I said, look, it could be a million and one other things. I've done the thing I shouldn't have done. I turned to Dr. Google, and you can really take yourself down some rabbit holes by reading on there. But I talked myself out of testicular cancer. I said, unlikely. I eat loads of salads. I'm perfectly fit and healthy. I run loads. Can't possibly be cancer. It's got to be something else. But through having a conversation with my wife after the sonographer appointment, she turned around and said, you're an idiot if you don't think this is cancer, because what he has said to you, what you've told me he has said to you, he has clearly found something in that scan. Because he said to me, when are you next seeing your doctor? And I said, my GP's going to ring me, whenever he gets the results. So what would that be, 2 or 3 days' time? He says, they'll be on his desk before you walk out my door.
Right, yeah.
And Lisa, my wife, turned around and said, he's found something. There's no doubt about it. And it was very quick. After that, the GP phoned me the same afternoon, and then I was in with the oncologist a few days later than that. And I sat at our oncology appointment, and the only word I could hear was cancer. And it just became louder and louder and louder throughout that conversation. And that was a real moment where it dawned on me and went, okay, I get it. I understand what you're saying. At that point, of course, they can't do the histology until they got it out. But I was negotiating with the oncologist. In my normal style, I had a run in the diary. I was due to run from home to Land's End on the southwest coast path in early September. And bear in mind, we're now in early July, so I was only a couple of months out from doing that. Tough run, 170 miles, about 28,000 feet of elevation gain over a handful of days. And I said to him, look, I understand what you're saying, but could this wait? I'm mid-training for an event. I want to get the event out of the way. Could this just wait? And he looked me in the eyes and went, no.
I bet your wife wasn't a massive fan of that question as well, by the way.
The first time she became aware that I asked that question is when she listened to a podcast that I spoke about it on.
It's hilarious.
Many months later, I didn't admit it. I didn't dare. But the histology showed that it had come outside of the testes itself. It had I had lymphatic invasion, had Ray testis invasion as well. It hadn't spread into the lymphatic system, thankfully. But I was. The oncologist said you were so close. Unbelievably close. He said if you had not spotted it when you had spotted it, we would be having a very, very different conversation about where you currently were and what your treatment plan would be.
Wow, that's yeah. I mean, that must be so hard to hear. Can you take us? I know you said all you could hear was that word cancer. Was it just you in the room, by the way?
Just me.
Just you. And how, as you left, you've just been told this incredibly difficult news. I'm sure you're leaving that just with that one word on repeat. How did you tell your family? Obviously, you've got a young family, and you've gone from like the prime of being an ultra athlete, and then suddenly you're a cancer patient. How did that tally in your head, and how did you get round that?
Oh, there were some very dark days and some very dark moments. My wife knew. I didn't even have to tell her when I walked back in the door. She knew already. She's very pragmatic, and she was like, okay, well, we just need to do what we need to do. We've got a young family, not so young these days. We've got 3 boys. They are now, we're just about to go into what we call our evens year with them. They've got birthdays just coming up, so they're going to be 22, 20, and 18. So if we go back 3 years, you can track back to what age they were. They were all sitting in absolutely the primary age group for testicular cancer. So the decision was made that we would be, and we've always been very open as a family anyway, made the decision that we'd be completely open from day one as to what was happening, what I was going to go through, but most importantly, what that meant for them, and what that meant for them being aware of their own bodies and checking themselves. And we have that conversation on a monthly basis within the household, within the whole family, making sure they're doing what they're doing. It was my wife I felt really sorry for. On the drive home from my appointment with the oncologist, which took me about 25 minutes or so, my primary thought was my wife, because it had not been that many months before her father had been diagnosed with lymphoma. So, and I'll still get a bit emotional about this when I think about it now. But there I was, putting myself in her position, thinking her husband and her father both have cancer. And I think when we hear that word cancer, I think we take ourselves, well, certainly I did. You take yourselves, I think, to the darkest and most extreme place, which is this is devastating on every level. And what will that mean? I've broken bones. I was a very active child. I mean, I've broken both arms twice, and you can physically see that. I can physically see the break. I can physically see I've done something. So therefore, when you go and have an X-ray, you pretty much know what's going to happen, and you end up in your arm in cast. I couldn't see cancer. I couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. I had no side effects at all from the cancer being in my body. I had
Mhm.
no indication I had it at all. That might be slightly untrue. We might come back to that when we talk about running, but I generally had no indication at all. So I guess I was in a space of denial to one degree, and a very dark space of what does this mean now moving forwards? And I found that really tough.
Mm. Of course, you're always in the mindset of the impact of it, aren't you? I suppose that's part of the catastrophizing, taking that as far as your brain always lets you go, is that what's the impact of this on everyone around me, which just adds to the mental load, doesn't it? It's anxiety and worry and then concern for everyone else.
Oh, completely. And you have to consider
Mm.
that wider scope around you, those people that are around you, and how that's going to impact. I remember that same day I picked up the phone. I picked up FaceTime to my parents. My parents are about 3 hours away from us, and I picked it up and told them. And my mum's always got an emotional person, and my mum found that really hard to
Mm.
take the news to take. Um, so it was hard telling people, but actually in some way sharing the load also was hugely helpful, not being a closed shop about it. And I made that decision really early on, even before I'd had the operation. I made the decision early on that actually I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about this. Primarily, I spoke about it from my perspective, which was I think this will help me talking about it in whatever shape or form that comes. But that then that thought process developed into awareness. Actually, I'm talking about it now. You and I are talking about it because it's creating awareness. And that's so important.
Yeah. And I had a similar experience in that catharsis of this is happening, talking about it, shares it, and then you start seeing a positive impact, which is obviously just a sort of beautiful side effect of something that you're doing for you and then for others is really mentally beneficial because you can see that it's helping other people through a really difficult time. Um, we'll I'm sure we will dive into that. Should we stick with where you're at in this part, which is you're preparing for the orchidectomy?
Correct. So I had got home from the ultrasound, and true to his word, that those scans were on my GP's desk before I'd even got out of his office and in my car in the car park. It was less than an hour after I was at home. My GP phoned and says, "I'm putting you straight through to the oncologist up at North Devon Hospital. We'll get an appointment straight in the diary." And the day hadn't even closed when I'd had confirmation from the hospital that actually I had an appointment the following week.
Wow.
So it all was moving at a really, really fast rate. I sat in with the oncologist. He went through all the details, of course, as I said, and then it was just a week after that, whereas he said, "Okay, we're going to operate. This is what we will do." He was very clear around it. I did have to stop him at the point where he said, "Well, what we actually do is we do an incision here and then we pull it out." I was like, "That's too much detail."
That throws
Okay.
it. You always think it's through the scrotum, right? It's not. It's higher,
It's
and then
not.
yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got a beautiful scar that I can't show anyone without the fear of being arrested. But yeah, but it was it was that description. I was like, just hold it there.
Yeah.
There's stuff I need to know and there's stuff I don't.
Yeah, I'll sign the
But
form. It's fine, doc. Don't worry.
yeah, but it was less than a week. I was then on the operating table. Again, I went into the ward day up here in North Devon. The team up there were just fantastic. Made me feel very welcome. I was still in the mindset of negotiation. I had the surgeon come round to me early on in the morning, very early in the morning, and he said, "Okay, you're on the list. You're sort of 5 or 6 on the surgery list today." And I went, "Okay, cool, yeah, get that. But do we need to do it? Are you absolutely
Mm.
100% sure you need to go through with what you're going to do?" I said, "Because my bloods actually are not showing any indication that there's a cancer there. All you've got is what you've seen as far as the scans are concerned, and you think it's cancer that's there." So do you really need to go through this operation today? So he took my comments on board, and he went away. And then the nurse came back and said, "You're number one on the list. You're going in now." And I think it was the fear I was going to do a runner.
Asked and answered, absolutely.
Yeah. So he clearly knew what my mind was going through. And the operation itself, I got no concept as to how long. I just remember the laying in with the anaesthetists in the room before, obviously, you go into theatre, and I noticed that one of them was left-handed, and I'm left-handed, and I said, "Oh, you're a lefty," and I normally have always a conversation because it's a nice icebreaker. You know, do you do everything else left-handed? Do you eat left-handed? Do you play sport left-handed? And all I remember with the last word was tennis, and that was it. I was out like a light after that. But I happily admit that when I came to, I was actually in quite a lot of pain.
Mm.
I was in significant amount of pain as I came round, and the surgeon actually came back out just to have a look and make sure everything was okay. They called him out of theatre. But he said to me, one of the reasons why you're in quite a lot of pain, and one of the reasons why it's going to take you longer to heal than perhaps someone else is paradoxically is because you're very, very fit. He says, and actually that's going against you, because when I made the incision, I was going through thick, dense muscle. He said there was no fat to go through on you at all. He says, so of course that's going to take a lot longer to heal and a lot longer to repair than perhaps somebody else. So actually my running wasn't doing me a favor at this point. But it did take me a long time. You know, I was only in for day surgery. I actually came out that night. I was very unwell, and we set up another room in the house downstairs, because there's no way in the world I could negotiate stairs. So we set up a room downstairs, and that's where I stayed for a while. But it took me quite a few weeks to really become anywhere near comfortable. Some people recover much quicker than that. For me, it took quite a few weeks for me to become very comfortable with moving around again.
Which is obviously difficult anyway. And forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but was it the fact that you're so active as well? And this has happened so quickly. You know, you're running, everything's going fine, you're training for a big thing, and then it's cancer operation, like immediate, huge news, whirlwind. I imagine, like, it's kind of good. You're getting in instantly, brilliant, but also no time to process. And then you've got this whole thing that you've got to recover from, like stopping you moving, stopping, I guess, what is usually for most people who are quite active, a coping mechanism as well, both mentally and physically. So how was that recovery period, and how did you cope with that? Was it just like, this is a thing, I mentally have to get through this? Or was there you've got chemo potentially looming and everything as well?
Yeah, I was one of those children growing up that your mother says, "You got ants in your pants, Andy." And I did. I was never still for 5 minutes. I was always doing something. What I've learned now, as the benefit of age and time, is that actually I love a goal, and I love to achieve, and I love to explore, and I love to push the boundaries as far as I can get them. And that's why I was always very active growing up. And running really played into that. I ran for lots of reasons. I run because I love it. I love the physical nature of running. I love where it takes me. I'm predominantly a trail runner, and I love being off the road. I love being off the beaten track. I love discovering and seeing things that most people don't get to see, because you're either running on a road or you're in your car, and you're boxed in. So that being taken away is very difficult. And knowing that I would be out the shoes for a period of time, I don't know how long that was. I had no idea at that point how long that was going to be, but I knew that it would be quite a while. Every day I wasn't being active. I felt my fitness just draining away. The reality is very different. It doesn't drain away. I assure anyone going through something as major as this, your fitness actually doesn't drain away as much as you think it does. It does come back pretty quickly once you're back into whatever activity it is. But at the time, it didn't seem like that. And you can, when we were speaking last week, I think one of the things I said to you was, people have said to me, "Oh, I don't let something define me. I won't let my cancer define me." Actually, I had a different view on that. It was going to define me. Absolutely was going to define me. But it was the definition I chose, not the cancer. And as I laid there recovering, and I was just a few weeks out from starting the chemo, which I knew I would be coming up and I'd take another knock from, I made a decision. I could either wallow in what I was going through and let it really impact and affect me negatively, or I could harness everything I was going through and rebuild and use it as a positive impact on my life. Because I realized that this has opened a door. I didn't know what was through that door at the moment. I hadn't walked through it, I hadn't discovered it, but I knew it had opened a door. And that was a door that not only would I not have walked through unless I'd been diagnosed with cancer, I don't think I would ever have discovered that door that I've now walked through. So at that point, I said, I'm going to go down the road of rebuilding stronger. And I'm going to come back as what I termed Andy version 2.0. And that was then my focus. I had that as a real positive focus, and everything that was going to happen from that point onwards, I was going to try and find the positive in it and how I could harness that to the benefit of myself and others.
Just huge respect for that that mindset. Just think that is so important, that goal setting. And on any level, obviously I've spoken to a lot of people that have gone through that. Goal setting can be as grandiose or as granular, and I think it's still as impactful. It's whatever you need in that moment to have that goal, whether that is walking a set amount of steps, or whether that is just eating some good food, or whether that is, once this is over, I'm going to run some ridiculous 250-mile race. It's any of those things. Or in your case, it's just like, this is going to have a positive impact for myself and for other people. That is just an incredible mindset to take through such a difficult situation.
I think it's really hard to find that resilience. And I've thought long and hard about how I managed to move myself to that position. And cancer's never far away from your mind. Once you've had a cancer diagnosis, it's with you forever. It's with you. It never becomes a part of your past. I find it becomes a part of who you are today. And I'm going through 5 years of close monitoring right now. I've just had bloods in the last couple of days. I've got a doctor's appointment this afternoon to look at a couple of things. And you're always waiting for something. But that mindset, it's what you make of it. It's exactly what you want to achieve from this, and what goal you'll set yourself off the back end of it. As you say, your goal can be anything at all. It doesn't have to be a huge goal. Just be something straightforward, such as, I'm going to talk to people about it in my everyday life. I'll talk about my experience. And it's amazing how many people do. I mean, when I managed to finally do the run to Land's End, I met a young lady. I was coming down quite a steep drop into a valley on the coast bar. She was coming up the other side. I was wearing a top that had some charity names on the front of it. So I decided to fundraise for charity on the run. And she asked me about them. And we stood there for a few minutes and we exchanged a really lovely conversation. She was 28, and in her early 20s, she had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And we had a really lovely quite an emotional conversation between the two of us. And she said to me, she said, "What do you currently find the hardest about it?" And I said, "The waiting." Because I'm currently in that phase of, 5 years being closely watched. I'm always having bloods, I'm always having scans. So I'm always waiting for a result. I'm always waiting for my phone to ping to let me know that there's a new test result that's come up from my latest scan or my latest bloods. And I just find I can't get over that nagging feeling of constantly waiting. And she was honest. She said, "You may never get over it." She said, "But it took me a good 2 years to become okay with it, to become part of just who I was now. And this is what happens now." So, even if you just set yourself the goal of, "I'm just going to talk," that's a fantastic goal. And I think it can really help you through the tough times.
100%. And we've talked about this, about how when you start talking, you notice other people gravitate towards you about talking about these sort of things. And they're not always in the same, not necessarily everyone's gone through testicular cancer, but people start talking about cancers that have affected them or family or health issues that
Yeah.
have affected them. And the power in being that guy, in our case or your case, where you talk about it is so important because everyone kind of wants to talk about them, right? But we just feel this societal taboo. And then you break it down
Yeah.
and the whole dam opens and everyone starts. And I think that's just amazing.
Well, I had a really impactful moment on the London to Brighton Ultra I did in 2023. I did it again this year. I've only just done it in the last few weeks, but did it in 2023. And that's 62 miles, 100k, leaves the capital and ends at the racecourse in Brighton.
You're so
Fantastic
nonchalant about
run.
that, by the way. You just have 60 miles. Don't worry. Nothing.
Yeah, fantastic event, and by an organisation you know very
Mhm.
well. Action Challenge, who run the Ultra Challenge
Yeah.
series, are an incredible outfit. Their ultras are some of the best organised that I've ever been on. But I made a decision that I would run where on my backpack I would have an A4 printout of the names of people who have been touched by cancer. And I put a post up in the forum for the participants. And this was about 12, 15,000 people in this Facebook group. Some of them would be on the event, some wouldn't be. Some have done them in the past, some are doing different ones. So you got a real mix of people. And I said, this is me. This is my story briefly, and this is the reason why I want to run with the names of those that lives have been touched by cancer in some way. I said, if you would like to put forward a name, whether it's yours, whether it's a family member or a friend, whether it's someone who's currently receiving treatment, someone in remission, or someone we remember, then all names are accepted. And the response was overwhelming. And I had beautiful sign I printed out, laminated, put in my backpack, a nice message about what all these names were about. And I had a lot of people that had suggested names I saw throughout the course of the run. I personally drew a lot of strength from it, and those tough miles going through. I actually would put my hand back and touch the sign, and I would say, "Look, I've made a promise to all of you that I will get to Brighton, and for Brighton, we will get to today." Even when you start to get quite tired later in the latter stages. But it was at one of the rest stops that I took my backpack off and I was refilling my water bottles, and my backpack was on the table. And some chap came and sat next to me, and he just asked about the sign. And I told him about it and told him why I was doing it and just briefly about me. And he just looked at me and says, "My wife's been recently diagnosed with breast cancer." He says, "And I don't know what to say." He said, "I can't talk to her. I don't know what to say to her." And you can probably tell I get a bit
Mhm.
emotional now about it, because it was a really, really emotional time for the two of us. He completely opened up to a total stranger he had never met before, and I would probably never meet him again. And we shared 20 minutes, and there were plenty of tears between the two of us. And I just let him talk about what he was going through and how difficult he was finding it. And in the end, I just left him with a thought. I said, perhaps you don't really need to say anything. Perhaps you just need to look at your wife and just say, "I'm going to be there for the whole journey." And that was a really a real vindication of the decision I'd made to talk openly about it.
So powerful. And it comes back to what we've been talking about. And I know we're referencing running a lot, but running is the framework in which you've chosen to use your platform to talk about this, which for guys especially, there's an old adage, guys talk shoulder to shoulder, they talk in parallel. We don't sit and talk face to face often, but we talk doing things, and running is your outlet and it's so many people's outlet, and it's become what you've built your platform around is actually your running exploits, but the cancer that is part of your journey and that you have chosen your definition of has drawn people into having these really incredible connections, and how you've raised loads of awareness and talked so openly about it. And I just think that's an amazing way to join those two things in your life. And do you want to just speak on that?
I agree. I mean, I think for me, you could just talk about the cancer, and we are aware of cancer, all types of cancer. It sits in our periphery in the modern world today. I don't think there's a single person that probably you speak to that doesn't have some story they can recall on how cancer sits within their periphery. But it's when it visits you personally, the perspective of that changes completely. You know, you've got something invisible inside of you that you never asked to come in, you never invited it to be a part of you, and you've got zero control over keeping it out. Zero control. But you have got control over how you now manage it and how you talk about it and how you frame it within yourself. So for me, it was about the running, and that rebuilding it was important to get back into the running shoes. My goal was just to get the running shoes back on. And I remember the first day I did it, I put them back on. I couldn't run. I could barely hobble down the driveway. But I was in my running shoes. And that was a really big step. And then I remember doing the first mile when I could finally do another mile. And I took it very, very easy. But it was from that point on, as I said, I'd rebuild Zandy version 2.0. And I was running up to, before the operation, I'd been running up to marathon distance. And I made the decision that I would then step that up to ultra and endurance running, not really knowing exactly what that was going to look like. And I remember training for running my first ultra 50K. I did it off my own back. I didn't fundraise that particular time. I just wanted to prove I could do this. I could get to this place. I left my front door one morning. I'd planned the route. And I remember I was about a mile away from home, and I remember my watch clicking over telling me I'd done 50K. Thankfully, I was in a very rural spot about a mile away from my front door, and thank goodness there was no one around, because I did celebrate and use some very choice words in my celebration that I had achieved what I had set out to do. Yeah. And that gave me the confidence that I could do this. And actually, running that kind of distance, and you go through injury and you go through pain, and your running's never easy, but actually having gone through cancer and having had that experience of the recovery from the operation or recovery through chemo, etc., was really helping me frame the difficult times within my running. I could then look and say, okay, I need to find the positives of where I am right now within the running. If I'm finding something particularly difficult, something particularly challenging, I'm in pain, I've got an injury, where are the positives? What do I do? How do I reframe that? How do I come back out the other side of it? And it wasn't long after that I thought, okay, this is the opportunity then, isn't it? This is the opportunity to really do some good. And I decided I would do two things. I would fundraise specifically for charities that really resonated with me. And I also made the decision that I would talk about it. And I've been on a lot of running podcasts, and a lot of radio stations have picked up runs I've done, and newspapers have picked up runs I've done. they want to talk about the run, but I use that as a platform to talk about why I'm running in the way that I am running. So it's the two have fused, definitely. In fact, I think it would today be almost impossible to separate them. I run events that are purely just for me, just enjoyable events that I don't fundraise on. But the ones that I do specifically fundraise on, I actually design myself. I don't do an organised event to fundraise on because I think if I'm going to do this, I want to do something that's very different, that grabs the attention, that I'm looking for, because that helps the whole awareness piece very much so around there. But also I like the idea of doing something that I've put together myself. Again, that's that whole pushing the envelope as far as I can push it. And it's taken me to some incredible and quite daft things at times as well.
Go on, tell us all about them. What have you been doing for charities?
Well, this year I've done a couple of biggies this year. I did in the end of January. I ran for 24 hours on a treadmill in my local gym. Anybody who's run for any amount of time on a treadmill will know that it is the hardest place to run. They are called treadmills for the right reason.
So I have this argument with my wife all the time. She doesn't mind the treadmill. I'm like, get on it, and I can't run like 3K. I can run a marathon outside, but 3K on the treadmill, I'm just
it's a totally different
It's
world.
horrible. Yeah, that's a horrible endurance event.
So 24 hours on there was really tough, but I had incredible support, and I had a lot of publications, radio stations, and some newspapers pick that story up, and that was great. That's what I was looking for, because they really got the essence of why I was doing it, and they always put the awareness piece front and center in there as well. Never did they put that as a secondary reason. They always, when they really became very aware of it, became front and center. I then did in April, I designed another one. I thought, I love Krispy Kreme. I mean, who doesn't love a donut? So, and I love Krispy Kreme donuts. And I thought to myself, I wonder where all the Krispy Kreme stores are within the M25. So I did the geeky thing and got all their addresses, and I put them into a spreadsheet and uploaded it to Google Maps. And I took out the really outlying ones that didn't sort of make sense to the position. And I was left with these 30-odd stores that just formed the most perfect running route. It started at Stratford at the Westfield Centre, which, if anyone who knows where that is, it is bang opposite the 2012 stadium.
Yep.
I mean, what a position to start a run. And in fact, I didn't know it, but on the day, as I turned the corner out Westfield and ran along the stadium road there, in giant silver letters, they must be 40 foot high, is the word run. And I just thought, even more perfect. I didn't see that until the day. It then went out, heading east out of London, swung round sort of, Wandsworth, Putney, Hammersmith, all round there before looping back up, coming up across, St Catherine's, across Tower Bridge, and then I ended it at Canary Wharf at their store at Canary Wharf.
Were you stopping at every Krispy Kreme to have a donut, or?
I stopped at every Krispy Kreme.
That might be the only run you've ever done where you've put more calories in than expended them. That's impressive.
I have proof you can run an ultra on donuts alone. The engagement was fantastic. I called it the 50K donut run. It actually turned out to be more than 50K. It was about 60K in the end, the route. But I called it the 50K donut run. I I tagged in Krispy Kreme to a post I'd put out on social. And they were superb. They picked it up and put me in touch with their PR company. Their PR company, they said, we're running past the guys at Krispy Kreme. Yeah, we're really cool for you to do this. We're really cool for you to use our logo.
Nice.
And keep tagging us in on the day, and we'll keep retweeting, and we'll keep doing stuff on the day for you to create the awareness. What I didn't know was that every single Krispy Kreme store, they've got this sort of like internal WhatsApp type group. And I became a bit of a superstar throughout the course of the day. So every time I'd visited one, they took a picture with me and they put it in their internal group saying, he's been to mine, he's on his way to yours. So I was getting this really warm reception at every single one I went to. And the team at Krispy Kreme, the wider team, the head office team based out of Camberley were really good, and the social media team were great. But the store teams absolutely made it for me. They were so engaged with what I was doing. And I had some surprise visits as well. I had a friend of mine from America, a runner from America that I didn't know was in the UK. Taps me on the shoulder at Victoria Station. He said, "I've been tracking you across London all day. I've been trying to catch up with you."
That's excellent.
And it's designing those types of events that are, to me, are really important. I want to put an element of fun in there. I want something that inspires people, engages people to do things. I had a couple of other runners come and join me for a few miles at the same time. Danny, who's another runner I'm connected with on Insta, he found me in London and joined me for a few miles. And so it creates a real narrative around what I'm doing. It's not about the running. It's about the whole story around the run itself and why I'm there and why I'm doing it.
Brilliant. The running is literally a vehicle for raising awareness, isn't it? And the fact that you can bring two passions together and galvanize such a community around you is absolutely amazing. Do you want to give some organizations a shout out? I know this is the Robbing Cancer Trust podcast, but we are here to help everyone. So if there's any organizations that have helped you or that you fundraise for that you feel passionate about, please sing their praises.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my first one, when I managed to actually do the Land's End run in the end, and that was a really emotional moment for me. It was a year and a bit after I had originally planned to do the Land's End run. I'd originally had that in the diary. The reason why I was doing the Land's End run in the first place was because my mum had lost her last sibling. My mum was one of four, and Auntie Claire had been in a home in East Sussex with dementia, and she very sadly passed away. And my mum, I think when my mum realised that she was the last of the four, she took it really hard. And I saw that, and I said to myself, I will do something really hard myself in recognition for what you're going through, and I'll raise some money for the Alzheimer's Society at the same time. I obviously had to shelve that idea because the cancer came along, but I absolutely was determined to get fit enough and back to fit enough. That was the big goal, to get fit enough to do it. I did it, and in the end, I chose three charities. I did Alzheimer's Society, I did Macmillan, and I did Young Minds. Because whilst I was out the running shoes, I did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and I realised the huge mental health crisis we've got in this country with our young people. And what really impacted me, particularly, I was reading a lot up here in North Devon, were young people that were thinking they had no other option in life but to take their own. And I found that really hard to read. So I thought, I'm going to do some work with Young Minds at the same time. I've also worked very closely with Oddballs, because again, testicular cancer was really important we get that out there. And a local charity up here in North Devon, who I was introduced to, started by a lady called Lisa Wallace. She was just before her 30th birthday. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. She lived for 12 years with breast cancer. She passed away in 2021, leaving behind husband, Rob, and young family. But throughout that time, throughout her chemo, she realised that chemotherapy is a really tough time. And it is a really tough time. I know we've not spoken much about the chemo, but the chemotherapy actually made me feel really vulnerable as a person. You're sitting there in the room, all connected up with the drugs coming into your body. And as much as you've got a lot of people around you and a good support network around you, I found the chemotherapy the loneliest and most vulnerable time of my whole journey. And I can't tell you why. And when I think back to it now, I really can feel everything I went through, all the emotions I went through at that time. So I was introduced to a company up here called Chemo Hero, and that was Lisa's legacy. Lisa developed a box of kindness, which is gifted to cancer patients are receiving their first chemotherapy treatment up here in North Devon at the local hospital. They've got a beautiful unit up here called the Seymour unit. Actually, I had my treatment down in Exeter on up here, but the Seymour unit's a specialist cancer unit up here in North Devon. And the box of kindness has grown a lot over the years. It contains things like a digital thermometer, which, of course, as we know, when you're going through chemotherapy, is super important to keep an eye on. That's an expensive bit of kit. Yeah. There are creams in there for the inevitable soreness. There are things to keep you entertained. There are puzzle books in there, pencils. There are, if you've got hair loss, there are hats or beanies. There's a separate box for male and female box. With the products tailored. But what really did it for me was when I looked at the box and I was shown these 2 tea bags. And I said to Rob, who's Lisa's husband, who carries on with a brilliant board of trustees, the charity, I said, why 2 tea bags? And they're 2 tea bags from a local tea company up here in North Devon. He said, the reason for 2 is because Lisa said you can put the world to rights over a cup of tea with a mate. And that did it for me. So I fundraised. The 24-hour run was for them. And I'll do another big one for them next year as well. So it's finding, for me, it's finding those charities, those organizations that have got a real story behind them. And it's the reason why I said yes to you. Because your story behind the charity is phenomenal. I read the website in detail, and your openness on there, how you discuss it, and the transparency that you have, I think really resonated with me. And absolutely, I'm delighted to be here with you today, and I will definitely look to support you as well in other ways moving forward, because I think the work you're doing is the reason why you're doing the work, the reason why that door opened for you and for your family, I think is phenomenal, and I can really identify with that door that opened.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've never really put it in that analogy, but it totally resonates with me in that, it was just a do-good was sort of the basis of it. And yeah, I think I always feel on my own journey at this point that I'm sort of playing catch up to my brother. A lot of people may not know who he was, but he was very fit, very active, annoyingly so as his younger brother. But I feel like that's become a major part of my life. You sort of absorb some of those qualities from those that aren't with us anymore. I suppose all of us want to leave the best of us behind, and that part in my life has definitely been inspired by my brother, and have always agreed with that open and honest. It is what it is. Quite frankly, cancer is shit. That's all you need to say to someone. If you don't know what to say, it's just shit, and I'm here for you. That's, exactly what you were saying earlier. It's those words are powerful enough for the situation, for whatever's going on, because that is the truth of the matter.
Until it actually visits you personally, I think it's very, very hard to understand exactly what those letters mean, what cancer actually means to you, and how it really does impact your thinking and your life moving forwards. You are, whilst you can be in remission, and a huge number of people are, and we're making phenomenal strides in cancer research. I don't think there's enough going into testicular at the moment. I think there needs to be a big push on that, but I think cancer generally, there's a lot of work going into it. It's never not part of who you are once it's visited you.
Yeah. And I from the outside, I would say that is true for the circle around as well. From that perspective, it sits in the periphery all the time. It's that little shadow. Andy, I would love to talk to you all day, and I actually feel like there is a million more things that we could talk about, especially as we've talked about chemo. We could talk about any long effects. I'd love to talk to you more about mental health as well. So perhaps we can get you back for a second episode in the future. I'm just
Absolutely.
conscious of our listeners and the fact that you are very kindly taking a lunch break. So can I just thank you for all your honesty? You know, you embody and you live everything that you talk about, and that authenticity is there in every word that you speak. And I feel like you are a much better speaker than me. You're just so natural with it, and I love that you are finding all these ways to connect with lots and lots of people all across the UK and internationally through your running endeavors and your awareness. I would love to have the opportunity to ask you 5 questions that we asked all our guests.
Of course.
So we'll do some quick fire ones, if that's all right. Number 1 is, what advice would you give to someone who's worried they might have cancer?
Go and talk to someone. Don't delay. Just go and talk to someone. I think it would have been very easy for me to have been in denial after I'd come out of the shower and not gone and picked up the phone to my GP. But picking up the phone to my GP was the best thing I ever did. Just do it.
Perfect. And if you can't pick up the phone to a GP, I would say pick up the phone to someone that will nag you to pick up the phone to a GP, because
Absolutely.
hopefully we've got one of those people.
To someone.
Yeah, brilliant advice. What's the most impactful thing someone did for you after your diagnosis?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think I could probably identify one individual thing. I think it would be the fact that my immediate family around me, 2 of our 3 boys still live at home, so they were here, and my wife were the most phenomenal support mechanism. I'm a very strong-minded, independent person, so having to rely on others is a very difficult thing for me to do. They made that the most natural, comfortable family thing that could happen. And whether it's your immediate family or whether it's good friends that you have, they'll be there for you.
Beautiful. What's the worst thing someone has said to you about having cancer?
Oh, the worst thing. You must be a faster runner now because you've got 1 less ball. Which I got what they were saying, but I still would have preferred not to have had 1 less ball.
Yeah, it's not a technique we want anyone to be implementing. Oh, geez. We don't need a doping scandal and a great testicular scandal going on, do we?
We don't.
Oh, something said so flippantly, I'm sure. Well, I always hope they don't mean these things with any malice. Just, yeah. Wowzers.
Oh, absolutely. No malice at all.
What advice would you give to someone recently diagnosed with cancer?
Be confident in the support mechanisms that exist. I think it's very easy today, if we consume all the media that's on our phones, to believe the NHS are in complete turmoil. I found the complete opposite. I found them to be nothing but exceptional at every stage and at every step, full of really compassionate and caring people, as well as your wider support network that you'll have around you as well, are absolutely important to your journey. Don't bottle it. Talk about it. Even if that's just sending a text to someone, send the text, send a WhatsApp.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm just so glad you had all those people around you, both professionally and personally, because it just makes all the difference. Lastly, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from having cancer?
That I'm not invincible. I believed I was. I think typically speaking, men do. I think I was brought up in a generation where, you know, there were phrases that I hope we don't hear as much these days, which is, get a grip, man up, be strong. Actually, you know what? Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're not strong. Sometimes you can't get a grip. Sometimes life throws one heck of a punch at you and you are going to fall. You can dust yourself off and pick back up. But the people around you will do the same, whether they're immediately around you or whether on the end of your phone that's in your hand. They will pick you up.
All comes back to just talking, doesn't it? Just problem shared, problem halved, just as a starting place. And I think you do that. So you are that person for so many. Sharing it online is a cathartic experience for all the people that see your content. So thank you for that. Can you just remind everyone where to find you, where they can follow you, how they can get in touch with you, and how they can be part of your journey?
The two best places is I'm very active on Insta, and you'll find me under Running Westwood Ho. Westwood Ho is a beautiful seaside town up here in North Devon. It's the only town in the UK that officially has an exclamation mark in its name after the Ho, but my profile doesn't. It doesn't allow me. But I'm Running Westwood Ho on Insta, and I've got a website under the same name, runningwestwoodho.co.uk. My stories on there. I will share the runs I've done on there, the runs I've got coming up on there. I write extensively, a lot of blog posts on there as well. Last August, I ran around Mont Blanc, and I shared that journey. And it's not a running blog. If you think that you're just going in to read a running blog, you're not. Particularly the Mont Blanc series, which I think are 6 blog posts, you'll find that I had, and I'm not a spiritual person at all, happily admit, but I found I had a real spiritual connection to the mountain, and I took a lot away from that. So I think if anyone's looking for something in their life right now, go and read that blog post. Six of them on there. It's a good read.
Love it. That's absolutely amazing, Andy. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for being here. Just look forward to seeing what is next, what challenges, and just keeping in touch. So thank you so much.
Oh, Toby, thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me today.
Thank you for listening, and thank you to our amazing supporters and funders who make this podcast happen. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a review and follow us on social media at Thrive Against Cancer. And be sure to check out our other episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. If you want to help support our mission to give a voice to the cancer community, please contact us or visit our website to learn more at thriveagainstcancer.co.uk.